Everybody to thank you very much for joining us for our event Broken Promises, the visa policy that fails migrant domestic workers in partnership with Kalayan, focus on labour exploitation and the voice of domestic workers. So to help us understand this problem, we have four amazing guests today who'll be introduced to you shortly. This will give us an opportunity to really understand this problem and know what's going on here in the UK for overseas domestic workers who came into the country with their employers. And we want to build an informed and supportive coalition of allies. So it's great to read in the chat where you're from. So do use that chat. And we might mute it at times just to help people concentrate on the conversation. And just to say that we won't be admitting AI note takers, but we will provide a recording afterwards on our YouTube channel. We'll also be posting it on social, so we encourage you to tag us so we can amplify your posts. If you have questions during the event, please use the QA button at the bottom of your screen. You may be called upon to unmute yourself and ask your question live. We'll reach out to you beforehand by direct chat to check you're comfortable. So before we get to introducing our great guests, I want to give you a little background on the topic. June the 16th marks the 15th anniversary since almost 400 votes were cast at the United Nations to adopt the International Domestic Workers Convention, with only 16 votes against. Despite the show of support, only 40 countries have ratified the convention, binding their governments to following its standards. And the UK was one of 63 to abstain from the vote back in 2011. And the following year, the government changed the visa regime for domestic workers entering the UK from abroad, removing their agency and tying their visa to their employer, meaning if they left their job, they'd lose their immigration status. Following campaigning in 2016, a new change meant these domestic workers can, in theory, change employers if they choose to leave. However, with the granting of a 6-month non-renewable visa, finding a job is just not realistic, doing little to give workers the agency they need to resist abuse and exploitation. And these immigration restrictions basically exacerbate an already vulnerable status, people who are often living in-house and without a network of support. So migrant domestic workers and their allies have been calling for the reversal of this change. And over the years, the government has made several promises and even commissioning an independent report. However, these recommendations and calls have been ignored, and there's been no progress to provide migrant domestic workers with protection as workers to enable them to challenge exploitation. A supporter, David, emailed me this week, and he pointed out that this situation is by no means unique to the UK. And that's very much true. But I hope this opportunity to hear from workers directly builds your understanding of why we need greater public awareness and support for better visa policies. So now I'm delighted to introduce the chair of our panel, Eleanor Lyons, the UK's Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner. Prior to her appointment, Eleanor was Deputy Children's Commissioner for England, advocating and championing for the rights of all children in England, and in particular, those who are vulnerable in care or in contact with social services. Eleanor is now in the final year of her 3-year term as Anti-Slavery Commissioner, so it's wonderful to have her insight into policy and experience working independently of, but with government at today's event. Commissioner, I look forward to hearing from you and our wonderful guests who are about to introduce, after which I'll be opening the floor for Q&As. So don't forget to post your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Eleanor, the floor is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. That was a fantastic opening, and it's great to see where everyone's from in the chat. I'm feeling very boring that I'm based in London when everyone else seems to be in far more exotic, exciting places than me. So lovely to see you all, and it's great to be with you all on a Friday afternoon. Thank you very much to the Voice of Domestic Workers, Focus on Labour Exploitation, Kalayan and Freedom United for bringing us all together at this important moment. to mark the 15th anniversary of the International Domestic Workers Convention. For those of you who I haven't had the chance to meet yet, I'm Eleanor Lyons and I'm the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner for the UK. That's a role that was founded in the Modern Slavery Act 2015, and it makes it my job to encourage good practice in the prevention, detection, investigation, and prosecution of modern slavery offences, and to do more to help in the identification and protection of victims. A key part of my role is to ensure that I give a voice and give the space for those who've been affected by exploitation to share their expertise and inform policy and practice. Domestic workers have long been recognised as part of a particular risk group that are at risk of exploitation due to the nature of their work, which often takes place behind closed doors and can involve isolation, dependency, and significant power imbalances. Over many years, the organisations who are represented here today have documented the impact that immigration restrictions can have on workers' ability to leave abusive situations, to seek support, and to exercise their rights. That's why my office has consistently highlighted the importance of addressing these vulnerabilities that can increase the risk of labour exploitation and modern slavery. While no immigration system can completely eliminate exploitation entirely, we cannot maintain policies that create or deepen conditions, even if inadvertently, which allow for exploitation to flourish. Whereas workers' immigration status is dependent on a single employer, or where leaving an abusive situation risks destitution, loss of lawful status, the balance of power can shift further towards those who are seeking to exploit individuals. We need policies that place the victim protection, access to justice, and prevention of exploitation at their heart. And that's what I call on the government to do with so many of the organisations on this call today. But I also think today is important because it's an opportunity for us to reflect on progress and consider the challenges that are still there. What more can we all do together to ensure migrant domestic workers are recognised, protected, and empowered? And I've got a fantastic group of women who are going to share their thoughts and inform us amazingly about what they think of these topics. So I'm really excited to be chair because actually these are the people that you want to hear from, not me. So I am going to give you a bit of an insight about the hugely knowledgeable panel that we have today before asking them some questions. So just to do brief introductions, Mimi is a survivor who has devoted her life to tirelessly advocating for the rights and well-being of domestic workers around the world. Mimi is currently a Deputy Director at the Voice of Domestic Workers, a UK-based charity to empower, educate and support migrant domestic workers. Evelyn is a survivor, an advocate and an active leader within Callian's community engagement group, where they support and empower fellow migrant domestic workers through advocacy, peer support and community organising. And Annalisa is a survivor and a dedicated campaigner and advocate for the rights and welfare of domestic workers, working alongside Callian and Migrant UK. I'm hugely excited to be joined by that fantastic group of women, and I'm always excited to be joined by women in general. So I'm going to ask the group to start sharing some insights and ask them some questions. And we're really excited to be here. So the question that I wanted to start with for the panel is to ask you all to tell me a little bit about yourself, your work and what brought you to the UK. Does anyone in particular want to go first on that? Does anyone want to open up the floor? Mimi, you look like you may do.
Yeah, okay, I'll open. Yeah,
Fantastic.
good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Mimi, and before I became a domestic worker, I have a background of midwifery in the Philippines. I'm also a mother of 3 children, which has always been the most important part of who I am. Like many Filipino women, I never dreamed of leaving my family behind. Poverty left me with very difficult choices. I wanted my children to have a better future, access to education, and chance to break free from the cycle of hardship that many families face. In 2013, I made the heartbreaking decision to leave the Philippines and travel to Dubai to work as a domestic worker. It was one of the most painful moments of my life. I remember saying goodbye to my children, not knowing when I would see them again, and I haven't seen them since then. I carried with me the hope that the sacrifice would be worth it. However, life overseas was very different from what I expected. Instead of finding security and opportunity, I experienced exploitation and abuse. I worked long hours and little rest. I felt isolated and powerless. Being away from my family made the situation even harder. There were many nights when I cried alone, missing my children and questioning whether I had made the right decision. In 2014, I came to the UK with my employer. Unfortunately, the abuse did not end. I continued to experience unfair treatment and felt trapped. Eventually, I found the courage to escape the abusive employment situation. It was one of the most frightening decisions I have ever made. I had no certainty about what would happen next, but I knew I could not continue living that way. Escaping was not the end of my struggles, but it was the beginning of reclaiming my freedom and dignity. My experiences opened my eyes to the realities faced by migrant domestic workers when I joined the Voice of Domestic Workers in 2016. I was granted with my overseas domestic worker visa in 2019, and last year I was granted with my refugee status. I am now serving as the Deputy Director of the charity The Voice of Domestic Workers and as Unite the Union's Domestic Workers Branch Secretary and Chairperson of Unite's National Industrial Services. Today, my journey is not only about survival. It is about using my lived experience to speak out for migrant domestic workers and ensure that others do not have to endure the abuse and exploitation that I have experienced. Everything I do is inspired by the love I have for my children and the belief that every worker deserves dignity, respect, and protection. My story began with poverty and sacrifice, but it continues with resilience, hope, and determination to create change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mimi. And I can tell that love you've got for your children when you speak about them. It's such an inspirational feeling and message to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that. And absolutely recognizing the resilience and the dedication you've got now to improving other people's lives. So thank you so much. Evelyn and Annalisa, would one of you like to also take the moment to introduce yourselves?
Oh, I can do first if Evelyn is not ready yet. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your spending your time to support these online events for domestic workers, and also thank you for the organizer to do it for us. So, by the way, my name is Annalisa. I am a domestic worker. I am a wife and a mother of 4 children in the Philippines. Before leaving my family, I tried many jobs in the Philippines, like working as a barangay health worker. A barangay in the Philippines is the smallest local government. So working as a barangay health worker, I'm just receiving like 30 pounds every 3 months, and also work as a daycare teacher, also the same salary, 30 pounds every 3 months. So there's a lot of many jobs I tried, and still not enough to support my kids. So in 2015, I decided to go abroad. I went to Qatar, work as a domestic worker. And then in 2017, my employer brought me to the UK, and I was trafficked. But through the help of many charities and organizations like Kalayaan, Kanlungan, Migrant UK, churches, and other communities, I was able to survive and now granted as a refugee and able to work and stay in the UK, and also serving my community, my fellow migrant not only domestic worker, all migrant worker, by supporting them um, uh, facing the challenges similar to mine before.
Thank you so much, Annalisa. And Evelyn, is there an introduction you're happy to share? Last but not least, just to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Evelyn from Philippines as well. Because of poverty as well, and can be able to find a work in Philippines, I decided to go abroad in UAE 2017. And like others, I am a victim of modern slavery, and I isolated, and then working in UAE is it's very hard, long hours work, no day off at all, and then in 2015, my employer brought me here in UK. um and the same happened, what happened to me in UAE, the same happened here in UK. I was trapped in the flat for 6 months, so no go out in that flat. um I For the 6 months, I don't know how I never experienced to ride London bus. I never experienced to go in tube, and I don't know the pound currency. I never seen any penny or what kind of currency pound is. And then I decided to run away because I felt like I'm suffocated in that room. And then with the help of my friend, and she brought me um in Kalayaan. So Kalayaan helped me, and by uh and then I am I am um I am in refugee status, and then by 2019, uh I am granted with the family reunion with my two children and my husband. Thank you. So my grandson is.
Thank you. So for me, across that question of what brought you to the UK, what your work was, and Annalisa, Mimi, and Evan have been so eloquent with telling us their stories, but consistently, I think it's clear that they were driven by something that's completely understandable to all of us, which is like wanting to look after your children, your family, your loved ones. And I think that personal sacrifice is so clear. But it's also really clear to me from what you've shared, the bravery that you now have in wanting to help others and still being able to have that sentiment, have that feeling, despite the horrible exploitation that you've been through. So thank you for sharing that. I think that leads me on to the next question about what you wish more people understood about domestic work. If you were to explain it to people on this webinar who may not understand about it, what do you think is really important that it brings it to life? Mimi, what do you think is the answer to that?
I wish more people understood that domestic work is real work. Just because it happens behind closed doors does not make any less valuable or demanding. What many people do not see is the sacrifice behind the work. For migrant domestic workers like me, we spend years caring for other people's families while being separated from our children and loved ones. Me personally, I miss birthdays, school events, and important moments of my children's lives because I was working abroad to give them a better future. That emotional cost is rarely acknowledged. I also wish people understood how vulnerable domestic workers can be when they live where they work um, without clear boundaries, contracts, personal space, or regular days off. Work can become endless. When your workplace is also your home, it can feel like you are always on duty. You wake up thinking about work and go to sleep knowing there will be more work waiting for you the next day. Everyone deserves rest, privacy, and time to themselves. The reality is that migrant domestic workers make many other people's working lives possible. We care for children so parents can go to work, support older people so they can remain in their homes, and keep the households running every day. Yet, despite providing essential care and support, domestic workers are often not recognized as part of the care workforce in the UK. One reason is that domestic work takes place behind closed doors in private households rather than in formal care settings such as care homes, hospitals, registered care services. Domestic work has also historically been viewed as women's work and an extension of unpaid household responsibilities rather than a skilled profession. As a result, the emotional, physical, and practical care that domestic workers provide is frequently undervalued, overlooked, and excluded from the discussions about care work and social care policy. Without migrant domestic workers, many families would struggle to balance work and caring responsibilities. Our work enables others to participate in the economy, yet our contribution remains largely invisible and insufficiently recognized. Domestic work is care work, and it deserves the same respect, recognition, and protection as all other forms of care. Thank you.
Thank you, and completely agree, Mimi. It is bonkers to think as I sit in this home office in this building, if I had to eat, sleep, stay here all hours of the day, it would just be a completely different setting to actually be able to leave. That right to privacy is so important. That right to be able to actually have your freedom is critical. And Annalisa, when you listen to that, is there anything else that you wish that people understood about domestic work? I can't hear you at the moment.
Yes.
Perfect.
One thing I want people to understand is that domestic workers are often told that we are a member of the family, which is not true, which is that the reality is we are a worker. Yeah. Yeah, because if we are truly a member of the family, we cannot experience the abuse, the exploitation. So we are a worker. So our work is important. So this is always many employers, and I heard this many times in my boss. They said, "You are a member of our family, but when they are away, I'm not allowed to go because I need to look after their house. So if I am a member of the family, if they will go, I will go, not to work, to have a holiday also." So yeah, that's I want people to understand that we are not a member of family, we are a worker.
Yeah, so Annalisa, just to bring that to life, to understand from you, is it that you think sometimes people are saying your work, like you're part of the family, almost to hide the exploitation? They're
I
doing it to make it sound loving and caring, and actually it's completely the opposite.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
they may said it like to like good intention, but
yeah,
for us, because we have experienced like the exploitation, the abuse, what they're saying is not true because it's
yeah,
different from what they're saying and what's happening inside the house. Yeah.
yeah. I completely agree. Thank you for sharing that. And Evelyn, is there anything else that you wish that people understood?
For my I want to add that uh, domestic worker we we do our job. We work hard. We love our job. So we deserve to be treated like a human because we are a human being. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those insights were so powerful in recognizing that actually the levels of support and care that domestic workers are providing to families, and they're not getting that same recognition in response when they're exploited. So it's horrible and heartbreaking to hear, but thank you for sharing those insights with us. I think this is really clear to me, but I'd love to hear from you in your own words why you think it's so important that the voice of domestic workers are at the centre of conversations about policy, about rights, about protection. Mimi and Annalisa, you're both off mute. Did you have anything that you'd like to say in response to that?
Yeah, as a survivor of modern slavery, an advocate, and a trade unionist, I believe it is essential that we lead conversations about policy and exploitation because we are the people living the reality of these issues every day. Policymakers, researchers, and organizations have often have good intentions, but there is no substitute for lived experience. We understand the barriers, the risks, the challenges because we have experienced them ourselves. We know what it feels like to be trapped in abusive workplace, to fear losing our job, our immigration status, our ability to support our family back home. When I escaped exploitation, I learned that many of the systems designed to protect workers do not always work in practice. That is why we are expert by experience. We know what support is accessible, what protections are effective, and where the gaps exist. Policies are not just words on paper. They affect our lives, safety, and futures. I have seen how powerful survivor leadership can be. We move beyond assumptions and stereotypes and focus on real solutions. Survivor led advocacy brings honesty, credibility, and practical knowledge that cannot be learned from a report or research paper alone. Representation also matters. When we speak in parliament, participating in consultations, negotiating through trade unions, or influencing policy, we feel seen and empowered. It sends a message that our voices matter and that we are not just victims of exploitation. We are leaders, experts, and agents of change. The people most affected by policies should have a seat at the table when those policies are being created. Nothing about us should be decided without us.
I agree. I mean, they're so eloquently put, and I completely agree. And Annalisa and Evelyn, do you have any additions to what Mimi said? Why do you think it's so important that your voices are heard, that people are including you in their policy development?
Oh yes, I just agree to Mimi that we the domestic worker should lead this kind of conversation because we understand the situation because we are the one who faces these challenges, the abuse, the exploitation, the mistreatment. So we could contribute good insight for the changes of the law, the rules for the domestic workers. So I just agree with Mimi.
Don't you, Annalisa? And I think it's also your passion and your genuine experience really comes through when you speak. And I think it just is so much more convincing to policymakers when they hear that real world impact from both what you and Mimi had said. And Evelyn, did you want to also add to this? I think Evelyn may have dropped off for the moment, but when she comes back in, we'll come back to her on this one. But what really struck me from what you both said, and why I think it's so important that the government has survivors at the table, is because you are so much more than what you experienced, as you both said so eloquently. Actually, you can explain the impact of policies, you can say the real life impact, and you can really bring that to life. and make sure that actually we're doing stuff which genuinely helps people that need care and attention. And hopefully, the best thing is to be able to prevent exploitation before it happens. I'm going to move on to the next question, but we'll bring back Evelyn when she gets the chance to reconnect. Looking at where we are today, and Joanna did a really good lay of the land at the start of this call. What changes do you think would make the biggest difference to the lives of domestic workers in the UK? What are the kinds of things that you would like to see change?
Okay, let's start. Yeah. The biggest difference for migrant domestic workers in the UK would be restoring our freedom, dignity, and security. No worker should ever have to choose between enduring abuse and facing an uncertain future. I believe the reinstatement of pre-2012 domestic worker visa is crucial. Before 2012, migrant domestic workers had the right to change employers and renew their visas. This gave workers a real escape route from abuse and reduced the power employers had over them. Freedom to change employers is only meaningful if workers also have the right to renew their visa and remain in the country while looking for decent work. No decent employer will hire a domestic worker within 6 months of their visa, not unless this employer is also an abusive one. I would also like to see the UK ratify the ILO Convention C189. Domestic workers deserve the same rights and protections as other workers. Fair working conditions, decent hours, proper contracts, and protection from exploitation. Domestic work is work and it should be recognized and protected as such. Alongside this, the implementation of ILO Convention C190 on violence and harassment is also essential. Too many migrant domestic workers experience verbal abuse, intimidation, humiliation, harassment, and even physical and sexual violence behind closed doors. Everyone has the right to a word of work free from violence and abuse, regardless of their immigration status and their job. Abuse continues because many employers believe they can act with impunity. Workers need to know that if they report exploitation, they will be protected and treated as victims, seeking justice, not as people who will be ignored, blamed, or punished. The changes I want are not special privileges. They are basic protections that every worker should have freedom from exploitation, access to justice, protection from violence, and the right to live and work with dignity. No one should have to suffer abuse simply because they came to this country to care for others and to provide for their family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mimi. And I think those changes will make a big difference. We should absolutely continue to push and hope the government will adopt them. Annalisa, is there any particular changes that you think would really make the biggest difference to the lives of domestic workers in the UK?
Yeah, I want to add the changes of this is the secure immigration status. Domestic workers should have stable visa, so they don't live in fear of exploitation or deportation or losing their visa because not all was granted a refugee like us, Mimi, and even we are granted as a refugee. This is not a good situation because we are not allowed to we cannot go home, we cannot see my family. For those who are who had a chance to reunited with their family, it is a bit better, but for us, or I don't know Mimi, but for me, I don't have a chance to reunite with my family because my childrens are all adults, so it is hard, it's very hard. So this is important to have the secure immigration status for the domestic worker, and also the right to change of employer. Yeah, domestic workers should be able to leave a bad and abusive employer without losing their visa. So this is very important. And a stronger labor protection. We should protect from abuse or exploitation. And access to justice is also important. Workers should be able to to not mistreated, the legal action and support from court or tribunal regardless of their immigration status. So those are important to add the changes for the domestic worker. So that's
Completely agree, Annalisa. I think they're fundamental rights that everyone should be able to leave an employer that's exploiting them. They shouldn't feel under any pressure to not be able to report about exploitation for fear of deportation. I think they're really important things that you highlighted. Evelyn, we lost you for a little bit, so you now have the tough task of answering two questions at once, which I know you're going to absolutely thrive with. But just to bring you back in, so it'd be great to hear from you about why you think it's really important that the voice of domestic workers are at the centre of policy making. And also to hear from you about what you think would make a big difference, the biggest change for the lives of domestic workers in the UK.
For me, why is important the migrant domestic workers conversation? Because as a survivor, we have a lot of experience, and being a survivor, leadership leads to a better solutions. And about the changing world, what is the question? Changing world, yeah.
Yeah, no, I did ask two at once, which was naughty of me, but agreed with the expertise that you've got to share. And the second question was, what is the biggest change when you look at the UK today? What do you think would be the thing that would make the biggest difference to the lives of domestic workers?
Maybe I think it's enforcing mandatory information session with independence advice agencies, so workers completely understand their rights before and after arrival here in UK. Because for my experience, my experience and my case is when I came here in UK, I know nothing. I just came here without anything, just landed. So I don't know my rights, and then I I I sacrifice myself for 6 months because I don't know my rights. So I think it's very important to to give the information to who is coming here in UK.
Yes, completely agree. I think it's so important that people know that they should be able to leave these exploitative employers, and knowing your rights is so critical. So thank you so much for sharing. And we're going to do one final question to the panel from me before we open up to questions from the chat and everyone who's tuned in to listen to you. I think this is a really important question about after all the challenges that you faced and after the long campaign for change, what is giving you hope for the future? And when I listen to all three of you speak, you are giving me hope despite everything you've been through, which I think is really inspiring. So where are you getting that hope from? What's making you come to this webinar and inspire us all about what actually can still change for other workers?
Yeah, thank you. What gives me hope right now is looking back at my own journey and seeing how much is possible when people are given the chance to be heard. If someone had told me before or then that one day I would become an advocate, a trade unionist, a branch secretary of United Union, representing migrant domestic workers in national and international spaces, I would never have believed them. But all but it all happened through the proper guidance of our director Marisa Biconia, my mentor, and being with the voice of domestic workers. That is what gives me hope. I see my own story reflected in so many workers I meet every day. I see women who arrived feeling frightened and alone, just as I once did. Then slowly they gain confidence. Hope comes from seeing survivors no longer defined by what happened to them. Instead, but they are using their experiences to create change. I am especially encouraged by the international connections we are building, whether I am speaking in the UK or with workers and in effort. I see people coming together around a shared belief that no worker should be exploited. That reminds me that we are not fighting alone. What gives me hope most of all is that am living proof that change is possible. I went from being a woman trapped in exploitation to someone who now has the privilege of advocating for others. My journey has taught me that even in the darkest moments, people can find strength, rebuild their lives, and become agents of change. Every time I see a migrant domestic worker find her voice, stand up for her rights, or realize her own worth, I am reminded why I continue this work. That gives me hope, not only for myself, but for the future of all migrant domestic workers. The future belongs to the workers who refuse to stay silent, and I believe that future is already being built. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mimi. And it's great to hear about your fantastic mentor too, who's obviously done fantastic work and giving you such a good platform because you are very inspiring to listen to and you do create a big sense of hope. And Annalisa, what is motivating you? What's giving you hope for the future?
Yeah. I never thought, I never expect that I'm now an advocate, a campaigner, a community leader because the abuse I experienced before. But because of attending the workshops, training, involving myself to different charities, organization, uh, I had this confident speaking to people and campaign. And every time I remember what I've experienced before, I still sometimes crying because I remember those abusive people, and also because it's still happening to other domestic worker now. So what I'm hoping and wishing now is that uh, I want uh, I want seeing a migrant domestic worker more visible and having our voices to be heard. And also, migrant domestic workers transform their life experience into a leadership like us, Mimi, Evelyn, and other advocate of migrant domestic worker. And also, what gives me hope now is I'm hoping that to bring back the concession to ratify ILO 169 and recognize the work of domestic worker as a real work.
Absolutely. And your leadership's so important. I think it is inspiring others to make those changes. So thank you so much, Annalise. And Evelyn, what is giving you hope for the future?
Um, uh, Maybe I think to keep join community engagement to support my fellow empower fellow migrant domestic worker to our advocacy. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. And I agree that community that you've got, that advocacy that you're creating, it's great when I come to your events and speak to you because actually it's an amazing environment to be part of and it does create a real sense of hope and change and hopefully things changing for the better for other people, which I think is hugely inspiring. We're going to give the audience, the webinar audience, the chance to ask you all some questions now. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions. I can see some coming through in the chat. Do we want to start with Sarah's question, Joanna? Great. Sarah, please feel free to ask your question to the panel. Hopefully you can come off mute and be able to ask it.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. Thank y'all so much for this incredible webinar. It was amazing to hear from all of you and hear your expertise. I'm curious, what can people, and when I say people, I mean maybe people who are working outside of legislation, but just people who are in community. what can people do to help people that are currently being exploited through domestic labor?
Can I answer that? Okay. Um, yeah. I think for the people, for the public, to help those migrant domestic workers who experiencing abuse and exploitation, maybe they can do a reporting, um, because they can report anonymously anyway. So that would be a big help, and also um, campaign for us, also, we have this, can contact us in our Facebook like page, or they can contact the first responder. There's anonymous reporting, or they can also contact Unite, the union, the domestic workers branch, if they see that there are domestic workers who are experiencing abuse, and they feel that they are exploited in private household.
Yes, I agree with Mimi again. You people also can refer those people who experience abuse from the employer to, like, yeah, refer to Kalayaan or to the Voice of Domestic Worker, Kandungan, because like me, as a freelance work support worker of Kandungan, what I did is we do interview for the person who we think that they are a potential victim of trafficking or exploitation. So we do an interview, and then we refer them to Kalayaan. So then Kalayaan refer them to the national referral mechanism. That's what we do at the moment.
And Evelyn, did you want to add anything to that?
I think it's easy as well if the government UK posted some contact details that if you feel abuse or if you feel exploitation, you just call this number, something like that, that they can post anywhere around the UK, so that it's easy for to contact them.
Thank you. Sarah, did that help you? I thought that was a really great question.
Yeah, that was a huge help. It's inspiring me to maybe compile those different referral numbers and organizations into a single resource and maybe post it on social media. I'm living in France, so I'm wondering if there are similar referral mechanisms here in France. So I'll have to look into that. Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great question. I think Varka was also comfortable asking her question, their question out loud. Can we unmute? And we'll give it a second to see if Varka can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hello everyone. It's Varka from Flex here. I want to thank Annalisa, Mimi, and Evelyn. Thank you so much for your insights, and also thank you so much for your hard work supporting others through those experiences in UK. My question is related to the Fair Work Agency. As Mimi stressed earlier, domestic work is often hidden inside private homes, which makes traditional labor inspection difficult and limiting the enforcement of basic employment rights totally. My question is, in the light of the newly established Fair Work Agency, what mechanisms could help address this enforcement gap?
Did anyone want to come in off the back of it? It was about the establishment, Vark, if I've got it right, about the Fair Work Agency, which is, for those of you who aren't from the UK, to give a bit of context, it's a brand new body that's been established by the UK government. which brings together a lot of different agencies that are responsible from tackling low-level poor working practices through to extreme labour exploitation. So it will all be in one government body, and hopefully they should be able to tackle the spectrum of harm that we see, from things like the minimum wage not being enforced through to some really harmful practices that are happening in homes, and it's just been established in the UK. Mimi, Annalisa, Evelyn, does the body give you hope? Do you have any reflections on it being established?
For me, if you are referring to a fair work agency in the UK, there are several mechanisms that could help us.
Attention.
Sorry.
Please go ahead. We've got a fire alarm, but please go ahead.
That domestic workers from exploitation and abuse. So maybe the possible mechanism for migrant domestic workers is the labor inspection and investigation, wherein to investigate the complaints about underpayment, excessive working hours, denial of rest days, and other labor abuses, and conduct proactive inspections in sectors where exploitation is common. Maybe another one is enforcement of employment rights. Ensure workers receive at least the national, because we do receive the national minimum wage, but enforce the holiday pay, the sick pay, because not everyone receive that. Not all employers are following those. And other statutory rights. Another one I can say is maybe the safe and confidential reporting that allow migrant domestic workers to report abuse without fear of immigration enforcement, provide anonymous reporting channels, and interpretation services. Maybe also penalties for abusive employers, issues fines and sanctions against employers who breach employment law, publicly name employers who repeatedly exploit workers, or ban them in hiring domestic workers. So yeah, I think for me that's my answer. I don't know, Annalisa, if you want to add something.
Oh, actually, you told everything, because I really want to say is that the government should punish, those abusive employer, because this is very hard for us that we experience the trap, while those abusive are still coming back to the UK, or still doing the abuse to the other domestic worker. So it's very important that the government make rules or law to punish those abusers.
And Evelyn, did you have anything you would like to add to this question about what we can hope the Fair Work Agency can do to protect workers?
Yeah, I think they answer everything. But I agree that being abusive employer is it need to be banned, or because they can easily for them to get another worker, but they do the same again and again. That's why. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Joanna because I've got a fire alarm going now.
No worries, Eleanor. That's timing. That's Friday afternoon timing. We've got so many questions. We're probably not going to get through all of them, but we definitely have time for at least another one. Kate from Focus on Labour Exploitations also helpfully answered some questions live in the chat. But one of the questions that we had from an anonymous attendee was whether domestic work and domestic work visas can ever be done safely for workers. Or is domestic work innately dangerous and shouldn't be permitted, which is an interesting question. Do you think that domestic work visas can ever be safe? And domestic work can ever be safe, rather? And Lisa, do you have thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Do you think that domestic work and domestic work visas can be done safely for workers? Or is domestic work always dangerous and should actually not be permitted?
I could say the visa for now for domestic worker is not really truly safe because we just given like 2 years up for those who are recognized as a victim of trafficking and human trafficking and slavery. We just giving 2 years, and after that, finish. We need to go back to our country, which is if we go back to our country, we were not staying in our country because of the poverty. We were going again to go abroad, and mostly we choose Middle East because going to Middle East we don't need to pay uh, to get the job. So yeah, that's my insight.
Thanks, Annalisa. Mimi, do you want to add to that?
So yeah, the question is the domestic work and the domestic worker visa can be done safely for domestic workers. Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
Two
Yeah, for me,
different questions, I think, mixed in there.
yeah. So yeah, for me, domestic work and overseas domestic worker visa can be made much safer for migrant domestic workers if there are stronger protections and enforcement mechanisms. For the right to change employer freely without losing immigration status. Currently, ODW visa holders can change employer within the validity of their visa or within 6 months, which is important safeguard against abuse. If they can if they can change employer, at least um, because not 6 months is not enough to find a decent job to change employer freely. So um, another one is longer term visa security. So workers are not forced to choose between remaining with an abusive employer or becoming undocumented. Many campaigners argue that visa insecurity increases vulnerability to exploitation. Another one is I can say that a firewall between labor rights, labor rights enforcement and immigration enforcement, at allowing workers to report abuse without fear or of detention or removal. Regular information sessions at visa application at arrival stages, ensuring workers understand their rights, including minimum wage, holidays, working time protections. UK guidance already states that domestic workers are entitled to employment rights and at least the national minimum wage. Another one is I can say is stronger labor inspections and enforcement against employers who exploit workers, underpay wages, or confiscate documents, confiscate passports. The UK has been strengthening sanctions against employers who exploit migrant workers. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you. That's really important to consider. I think there's a lot of things we have to take into account, and to make sure that this work is safe, right? So, and what, as we've mentioned at the beginning of this webinar and throughout, we have been campaigning for the same demand since 2012. Ella had a question, and we are almost out of time, but I just would like Ella to have the chance to ask a question to Eleanor. She specifically asked Eleanor if she could respond. Ella, are you able to unmute and ask your question live?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So my question is really for Eleanor, but thank you to everybody for this fantastic webinar and for sharing your perspectives. So the question is, domestic workers have been campaigning for the same demand since 2012 when rights were stripped away. And we now can see that the overseas domestic worker visa is under review. So what can we expect from the review, and how do we hold policymakers accountable? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ella. And first of all, to acknowledge for everyone who's been working on this and campaigning on this for so long, and after listening to the testimonies and the insights from today, it seems like such an obvious change that the government needs to make to better protect domestic workers. So I think hopefully we will see positive change happen. The honest answer is we have had a new minister in the department who's responsible for these areas in the last couple of weeks. So I knew what the previous minister thought about the issues in the area, and I'm meeting the new minister next week to speak to her about this area. So I think it is important that we continue to hold policymakers accountable, and I think all the organisations on this call do a fantastic job of doing that. But I don't know what the government will choose to do in this space, because I have to meet with the new minister. But I will be raising these topics, and I'll continue to push on my side.
Well, that's good to hear. That's great to hear that you've got a meeting scheduled and that you'll be raising these points. We are right at the hour now, so I want to take this opportunity to say a big thank you, Eleanor, for chairing our event today, and an extra big thank you to Mimi, Annalisa, and Evelyn for sharing their experiences, their knowledge, and their expertise on this issue, and how we can. I think what's clear is that we do need to come together. We need a bigger, stronger coalition of people who can really inform us from their own working experience, as well as allies who can add their power to calls for change. And we actually we have got a campaign that we will drop the link into the chat for you to join. But we are looking essentially for a system that gives people the ability to resist abuse and exploitation, to be in a powerful enough position to make change, to stand up. That's what we want. We want people to, feel empowered as they should be. Mimi and Annalise and Evelyn have done a brilliant job of showing us how important it is to be able to speak out when something's wrong and demand change, and we need to do that. So please, thank you all for attending our event today. We won't close it immediately, just so that you have a chance to continue with the chat. But we've got the run up to the International Domestic Workers Day next Tuesday. We hope very much that we can create a noise and see some action from the UK government and also elsewhere around the world for domestic workers everywhere, as we look for change. So a big thank you to all of our panelists, to our partners, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and to you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
guys.
everyone.
You were great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.